Northern France, spring 1944. The mud is thick with oil and blood. A Wehrmacht recovery team pulls an abandoned American truck from a roadside ditch, another prize from the endless tide of Allied vehicles flooding through Normandy. It's a GMC CCKW, what the Americans call a Deuce-and-a-Half. Standard cargo hauler, nothing special, or so they think. Back at the field workshop, the German mechanics begin their routine examination. They're hunting for weaknesses, design flaws they can exploit. They've done this before with captured Soviet trucks, crude things held together with welds and hope. They expect the American machine to be the same, hastily built, typical of a nation that supposedly values quantity over quality. But as they strip away the panels and peer into the engine bay, something stops them cold. The build quality is exceptional. Every component is precisely machined. The tolerances are impossibly tight. But that's not what disturbs them. It's something else. Something in the pattern of the parts, the systematic simplicity of the design, the interchangeability of every single component. One mechanic notices the serial numbers, the standardization markings. Another examines the engine and realizes he's seen this exact same motor in 3 other captured American vehicles from different manufacturers built thousands of kilometers apart. Then it hits them. This isn't just a truck. This is a revelation. A glimpse into an industrial capacity so vast, so methodical, so utterly beyond anything the Reich possesses that the implications are paralyzing. In this moment, covered in grease and spring rain, these mechanics understand something their generals in Berlin refuse to accept. How does a simple cargo truck become the prophet of an empire's downfall? The GMC CCKW wasn't designed to be beautiful. It was designed to be everywhere. When the United States entered World War II in December 1941, the Army faced a logistical nightmare. How do you supply a war on 3 continents simultaneously? The answer came from an unlikely place: Detroit. General Motors received the contract in 1941 to produce what would become the war's most crucial vehicle. Not a tank, not a fighter plane. A 6x6 cargo truck capable of carrying 5,000 pounds across any terrain on Earth. The specifications were brutally simple. It had to be reliable, repairable by minimally trained soldiers, and producible in numbers that seemed impossible. The German mechanics examining the CCKW in that French field workshop understood trucks. They knew the Opel Blitz, their own 3-ton workhorse. They knew the complex, carefully crafted German approach to engineering. Precision parts, skilled assembly, vehicles built to last. What they found in the American truck violated every principle they'd been taught. The engine was absurdly simple, a 270 cubic inch inline 6-cylinder motor with a modest 91 horsepower. By German standards, it was underpowered and unsophisticated. But then they noticed something extraordinary. Every single part could be removed with just 4 types of tools. The fuel system had no intricate carburetors requiring expert adjustment. The electrical system was so straightforward, a teenager could rewire it in the dark. One mechanic pulled the oil filter. It was identical to the oil filter in a captured Studebaker truck. Another examined the spark plugs, standard across the entire American motor pool. The tires? The same size as those on dozens of other Allied vehicles. Wheels? Interchangeable with half the trucks in the American inventory. This wasn't engineering in the traditional sense. This was something else entirely. This was war reimagined as mass production, and buried in that realization was a terrifying question. If America could build trucks like this, what else could they build? The story of American industrial mobilization reads like science fiction. In 1940, the United States produced fewer than 5,000 military trucks. By 1943, American factories were producing 50,000 per month. The GMC CCKW alone would see over 560,000 units built before the war's end. One truck rolled off the assembly line every 3 minutes. But the Germans examining that captured CCKW understood something more profound than mere numbers. They understood what those numbers meant. Every vehicle component was standardized according to the Army-Navy AN specification system. A fuel pump manufactured in Detroit was identical to one made in Indiana. A transmission built in January 1943 was interchangeable with one built in November 1944. There were no variations, no improvements requiring retrofits, no carefully crafted individual parts. This was Henry Ford's assembly line philosophy weaponized for global war. While German factories employed master craftsmen who hand-fitted components, American factories employed semi-skilled workers who simply bolted together pre-manufactured parts. A German mechanic needed years of training. An American GI needed 3 weeks and a manual. The Wehrmacht mechanics tested this theory. They took parts from the captured CCKW and compared them to components salvaged from other American vehicles. The generator fit 4 different truck models. The starter motor was identical to one in a captured amphibious duck. Even the bolts were standardized, every single one conforming to the same threading specifications. Then came the most disturbing discovery. Stamped inside the engine bay was a production code indicating the truck had been manufactured in June 1943 in Baltimore, Maryland, just 10 months earlier. But the wear patterns, the maintenance records they found in the glove box, told a different story. This truck had been driven hard, maintained minimally, and was still running perfectly. Meanwhile, German vehicles required constant expert attention, frequent parts replacement, and careful operation to remain functional. The implication was staggering. America wasn't just building more trucks. They were building trucks that ordinary soldiers could keep running under the worst conditions imaginable. Logistics had become a weapon of war more powerful than any tank or artillery piece. Back in Berlin, Wehrmacht logistics officers were drowning in spreadsheets of doom. They knew the numbers, even if they refused to believe them. The reports from the field workshops in France, from captured document analysis, from their own intelligence estimates, all pointed to the same impossible conclusion. In 1943 alone, the United States outproduced the entire German Reich in trucks by a ratio of 10-1. Not tanks, not aircraft, trucks. The unsexy backbone of modern warfare. While Germany struggled to maintain production of 30,000 military vehicles per year across all categories, America was producing 300,000 trucks annually. Just the trucks, not counting the jeeps, the half-tracks, the amphibious vehicles. But the mathematics went deeper than production numbers. The German logistics system required approximately 3 times as many spare parts as the American system, because German vehicles weren't standardized. A transmission failure in an Opel Blitz required an Opel transmission. A failure in a GMC CCKW could be fixed with parts from a dozen different American vehicles. German supply depots had to stock thousands of unique components. American depots needed only hundreds. Then there was fuel consumption. The CCKW's simple engine sipped fuel compared to more powerful German designs. It carried more supplies per gallon consumed. It required less frequent maintenance, meaning more time hauling and less time in repair. The mechanics examining that truck in France calculated that one CCKW could do the work of 1.5 German trucks while consuming 20% less fuel and requiring half the maintenance time. Multiply that efficiency across 500,000 trucks, and you're not looking at a military advantage. You're looking at an entirely different kind of war. A war where the side that can deliver more ammunition, more food, more fuel, more everything, faster and more reliably, simply grinds down any opposition regardless of tactical brilliance or strategic genius. The most devastating calculation came when German analysts estimated how long it would take the Reich to match American truck production using German manufacturing methods. The answer? Impossible. Germany lacked the raw materials, the factory capacity, the trained workforce, and most critically, the standardization infrastructure. They had spent decades perfecting precision engineering while America had perfected mass production. And in total war, mass production wins. The GMC CCKW wasn't fighting alone. It was part of a vast, interconnected system that redefined warfare itself. American military doctrine in World War II can be summarized in one brutal phrase: we will simply bring more of everything. More men, more bullets, more bombs, more bandages, more trucks, always more trucks. Consider Operation Overlord, the Normandy invasion. In the first month after D-Day, Allied forces landed over 1 million men in France. Keeping those men supplied required moving 400,000 tons of supplies from the beaches to the front lines every single month. The trucks that made this possible weren't exotic machines. They were mass-produced GMC CCKWs, Studebaker US-6s, and thousands of other standardized vehicles operating in a carefully orchestrated logistics ballet. The German defenders fought brilliantly. They counterattacked with tactical precision. Their tanks were superior. their infantry veterans. None of it mattered. The Allies simply delivered more shells to their artillery batteries, more fuel to their tank divisions, more ammunition to their infantry. When German forces destroyed Allied vehicles, which they did constantly, replacements appeared within days, sometimes hours. The Wehrmacht mechanics examining that captured truck understood this viscerally. They had watched their own supply lines collapse. They had seen German advances halted not by enemy resistance, but by lack of fuel. They had witnessed Panzer divisions sitting idle because spare parts were somewhere in a rail yard in Poland, buried under bombing rubble, or simply never manufactured in the first place. Meanwhile, American forces advanced because their logistics system was decentralized and redundant. Lose a supply depot? 3 more exist within 10 kilometers. Destroy a convoy? Another is already en route. The entire system was designed to absorb catastrophic losses and continue functioning. German logistics were a precision instrument that shattered when struck. American logistics were a rubber hammer that bounced back from every blow. This was the terrifying truth hidden in the CCKW's design. America had transformed war from an art into an industrial process. They had turned logistics from a support function into the primary weapon, and they had built this system on the foundation of unglamorous but revolutionary vehicles like the Deuce-and-a-Half. By late 1944, the Wehrmacht's logistical situation had moved beyond crisis into catastrophe. The Eastern Front was collapsing, the Western Front was barely holding, and everywhere German forces were being strangled not by superior tactics but by superior supply lines. The reports from mechanics analyzing captured American vehicles circulated through Wehrmacht headquarters with increasing urgency. Some officers refused to believe them. The numbers seemed too extreme, the disparity too vast. Surely American vehicles broke down more than reported. Surely their logistics system had hidden weaknesses. Surely there was some tactical solution to a strategic impossibility. But the soldiers in the field knew better. They watched American convoys roll past with an endless stream of identical trucks. They saw Allied units advance and then pause, not for tactical reasons, but to allow their supply lines to catch up. And then those supply lines arrived, rivers of GMC CCKWs carrying fuel and ammunition and food, and the advance continued, relentless, inevitable. German tactical commanders developed elaborate plans to cut American supply routes. They succeeded occasionally, destroying convoys, mining roads, ambushing supply columns. It never mattered. The Americans simply sent more trucks along different routes, or they airdropped supplies, or they pushed supplies forward with tanks converted into cargo carriers. The system adapted and persisted. One German officer, in a report that would later be captured by Allied intelligence, wrote with bitter admiration, "They do not outthink us. They do not outfight us. They simply have more of everything, and they deliver it faster than we can destroy it. We shoot down their planes and more appear. We destroy their tanks and more arrive. We capture their trucks and realize we have captured our own defeat." That captured GMC CCKW, sitting in a workshop in northern France, represented something the Wehrmacht could never overcome. Not courage, which the Germans had in abundance, not tactical skill, which they had refined to a deadly art, but industrial capacity married to logistical innovation. The combination was unbeatable. The truck's simple design, its standardized parts, its mass production, all pointed to a fundamental truth. Germany had lost the war not on the battlefield, but in the factory. The fighting was just confirming what the spreadsheets and the CCKW specifications had already proven. By the time those mechanics finished their examination and filed their reports, it no longer mattered. The outcome was already written in the mud of France, in the millions of tons of supplies flowing to the front, carried by hundreds of thousands of simple, ugly, unstoppable trucks. The GMC CCKW served in every theater of World War II. It drove across the deserts of North Africa, through the jungles of Burma, over the mountains of Italy, and down the frozen roads of Belgium during the Battle of the Bulge. After the war, thousands remained in service around the world for decades. Some are still running today, 80 years later, a testament to the elegance of simplicity. The lessons learned from the CCKW transformed modern warfare forever. Every military in the world now understands that logistics wins wars, that standardization and interchangeability matter more than individual excellence, that the ability to produce and maintain thousands of adequate machines defeats hundreds of perfect ones. These principles, paid for in blood across a global war, remain the foundation of military planning today. But perhaps the most profound legacy is this. The mechanics examining that captured truck in 1944 glimpsed the future of war. They saw that industrial capacity, unglamorous and unheroic, would matter more than valor or tactical brilliance. They understood that their fatherland, for all its military prowess, had brought swords to a factory fight. The Deuce-and-a-Half wasn't just a truck, it was a messenger carrying news of inevitable defeat. And like all unwelcome truths, this one was ignored until it was far too late. The Third Reich fell not to secret weapons or surprise tactics, but to an avalanche of ordinary machines, produced in extraordinary numbers, delivered by the humble 6x6 cargo truck that showed the world how wars are actually won. Not with glory, but with logistics. Not with genius, but with mathematics. Not with individual machines, but with overwhelming, unstoppable mass production. In the end, the greatest weapon America brought to World War II wasn't the atomic bomb or the P-51 Mustang. It was the assembly line, and the GMC CCKW was its prophet.